All right, so in the middle of all this, we got some Bears news that came out yesterday. Obviously, we like to say, hope everybody's staying healthy, safe, distant, doing our job to curb the whole corona thing. But anyway, so in the middle of our quarantine, some Bears news to talk about. So Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy did a conference call yesterday about free agency. And so we were all, obviously understanding that with the national situation going on, that there wasn't going to be a regular press conference, and we didn't really know exactly when they would get around to meeting with the media because of the whole rules. But, with enough technology, we figured at some point they'd do something. So they finally had the phone call. It's on YouTube. It's around 40 minutes, 35 minutes. And so you can watch that full context. But I'm going to just talk about some of the big takeaways that I got coming out of the phone call. So number one, as we all have seen, there's an open quarterback competition. And so I see some people like, oh, duh. But no, it really was a question because even getting Nick Foles, it was a number of ways they could have went about it. Even if their desire was to just have Nick Foles be the starter, they could have, put a spin on it, and they could have went about it in a way to make it seem like Mitch was still the starter. They could have did a lot of different things. They could have been up front. You don't know. And so it was really just a waiting game to see how Pace would kind of spin this move. And so the way he's spinning it is that it's an open competition, that they're both going to get a fair shake at the starting job, and the best man is going to play. So I'm fine with that. That was probably the number one expected outcome. The number two expected outcome for me, at least, was that they were going to say Mitch is the starter, and then they were going to pretty much do what they do with rookie quarterbacks. Bring in a young rookie, say our current starter is our quarterback, and then as soon as he plays bad, they pull him and put the rookie in. I thought they were going to pull that with Nick Foles, but that was my second outcome. But my first outcome was for it to be open competition. But off of that, this is why I said at the end of the year press conference, they said Mitch is our starter. Mitch is our quarterback. And I did give Ryan Pace credit. He says things that keeps it open for him to switch it later. And so he didn't stand on the table for Mitch. But when it came to questions about competitions, it was just like, oh, we always want competition, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We got 2 free agent quarterbacks. We got to replace them with somebody. We're not there yet. The problem is that you kept iterating that Mitch is your starter going forward, and you believe in Mitch. So even if you say we're not there yet, we don't know who we're targeting, you're still pretty much preaching that Mitch is going to be your guy. So now, to me, you handcuff yourself a little bit. Because I said at the time, I'm like, you had no reason to give Mitch that vote of confidence. All you really had to say was, we're going to bring in competition at each spot. No spot is guaranteed. That's all you had to say. You didn't have to say anything past that. But they chose to kept, pumping Mitch up. And now, like I said, I'm like, either you're going to go on business as usual, and it's going to be like last year where you're like, yeah, we want competition, and you really didn't actually push Mitch to do anything. Or you're going to bring in real competition. It's going to look like you just switched what you said. And that's what's happening. So now, one of my takeaways from this, and this is me, a couple times, I'm a recklessly reach, but this is just how it interpreted. But I'm going to let you know I'm recklessly reaching here. I feel like Mitch is mentally soft. Now, obviously, a lot of people already think that, have said that. I would never go there as an official stance because I don't know the guy. And, if you're not coaching him, then I'm not going to listen to you telling me how mentally soft Mitch is. Even with other quarterbacks, Cam or other people that react badly, I mean, you don't really know. But here's what I take away. Again, if I'm Ryan Pace, I know I didn't have to say that about Mitch. And so that press conference at the end of the year, that really raised my flag, because I'm like, okay, you're either making a stance here that Mitch needs to be like pumped up positively, or you're really not going to bring in competition. So you bring in Foles. You obviously knew you were going to bring in Foles. I think they knew the whole time. And so why did you say that about Mitch? I think you wanted to pump him up publicly because you know he might get down on himself. And I've told you what I felt about Mitch and the way he comes across and just the things he said over the years. He's a tryhard that really wants to be the part of a top quarterback pick. And I don't think it's natural. And so naturally, I think somebody like that would get down on themselves when they're not doing things right or they're not getting the praise. And so that's one. But the second thing is, in the conference call, Matt Nagy is in Pace are tripping over themselves to say how competitive Mitch is and how he's embracing the competition. Because everybody was like, is Mitch how's he going to react? How's he going to react? And so obviously, if Mitch was calling, asking for a trade, or calling and crying and like, I can't believe y'all brought in the quarterback, I thought this was my team, do you think they would say that to the media? So they only had one answer, which is fine. But I'm talking about multiple questions. They went out of their way to let you know how excited Mitch is. And my favorite is one of the reporters was just like, well, what did he do or what did he say to let you know that he's so competitive or happy about it? And it was such a roundabout answer. A guy like that is so competitive, it's part of you, and obviously you like No, they had no real answer. So they're just going out of their way. Not to say that Mitch isn't excited about it, but they made sure they had to let everybody know that Trubisky was open to the competition. And so, again, those two, go off in my mind, oh no, maybe Mitch isn't, mentally tough in that way. And so that's kind of one of the things I took away. Next thing, Nick Foles. I'm glad that Matt Nagy said this, because Nick Foles has familiarity with the OC, the QB coach, and Nagy. But everybody has come into it. Oh, he knows the system. And I've already told y'all about this system crap. And it's so funny how many people defend it. It's just like, bro, you don't know the system. You can't explain it. So stop telling me that you know what the system is. And so anyway, everyone's like, the system. Nick Foles knows Nagy's system. What's his system? I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so he knows the system. He's ready. Matt Nagy himself, thankfully, in the conference call said, look, people think that you play in these offenses and they're all the same. They're not. Even when he was with him in Kansas City, it's not the same. And I've been trying to tell people this. Playbooks are big and they change often, especially offensive ones. And so to think that what he did is the exact same is not true. Most of the time, you'll have language. That's the biggest thing you got to get over. The language and the play calling might be similar, but like Nagy said, there's some things. Now, Nagy tried to downplay it later, but he said, it's not the same. It's not apples to apples. And so there's some things he's going to recognize, but it's going to be a learning curve. It's not as big as Mitch's because he's familiar with things, obviously, but it's still a learning curve. So all these people are just like, he knows the system. And it's just like, no, he does not. And so they asked Nagy, could he play tomorrow? And Nagy was like, he could get by. And, he was like, we would dumb it down, but he could get by and we let him play football. Like, he did a real roundabout answer. Basically saying, no, the man does not know his playbook. And even if the playbook from last year is probably going to be different. And so, people got to realize this stuff's not that simple. They always wanted the system. They don't even know what the system is. Okay, so Nagy cleared that up. On top of the competition part, though, Ryan Pace, or Nagy, one of them said, though, that when they walk out first practice, Mitch will be in the huddle. And so it's going to be open competition, but Mitch is the starter and will get the first crack. So obviously kind of staying on pace with what Ryan said earlier. But yeah, so Mitch will be out there, and then it'll be a free for all. I don't know, but we'll see kind of how that goes, especially if we got a short off season. Yeah, I think that's, well, I mean, the other thing with the quarterbacks is that it's a relationship thing. They acknowledge that. We saw a lot of that this off season, and it's becoming a thing. And it's a stupid trend in the NFL. Like, it really is, to be honest with you. People, I always say this, it sounds cool to get the receiver that played in college with your quarterback, or to bring in an offensive coach that coached your quarterback in college, or you got your teammate's brother, you signed him, and it don't always mean anything on the field. Doesn't always translate that way. Yes, relationships are important, but I would tell you it's probably more important for coaches, coaching staff, than it is coach to players. And so you see it a lot. You see it with the Teddy Bridgewater move. You see it with a lot of the Patriots going to the Lions, some former Panthers going to Redskins. A lot of the quarterback moves have been about relationships. And so Nick Foles having experience with our guys, yeah, it sounds cool to write in an article, to put on paper, but at the end of the day, that don't mean a whole bunch. And so they talked about that. They talked about the familiarity with some of the offensive concepts. All that stuff is cool. But yeah, it's going to be open competition. And the thing that's weird about Pace and Nagy is that most times they seem pretty competent about football. Like, they'll say things that I agree makes sense football wise. And so they're not out here like, yeah, he's our best friend, and so he's going to obviously be great. Like, they're like, listen, like, that's not how football works. It's a part of it, but we're realistic. And so I like that part, but we'll see. All right. So Jermaine Ifedi, my worst nightmare. So a lot of people, and I'm not even gonna get into, but a lot of people just, Massey's gone, put him at right tackle, and no, I'm like, we'll see what happens. I said my biggest fear was that they pop Ifedi in at right guard and just go business as usual, and that sounds exactly like what's about to happen. So Ryan Pace said, they're going to evaluate it and go through the offseason. He always says the right thing, but he said we envision Ifedi kicking inside to guard. And so this is literally what I was worried about. Obviously, nobody's been moved on the O-line. Leno's under contract. Whitehair has an extension. Massey still has his contract. Daniels is still young. And so the only thing you can really say is Ifedi in at right guard. And so obviously they'll evaluate it and they'll switch stuff around like we've seen them do when things get bad. But as of right now, it looks like they're just ready to roll with that. Now, that scares me because of the draft. If we're going to pass over prospects, like if we just go with our O-line, pop in Ifedi at right guard, but we draft some prospects to compete, I'm cool with that. But more than likely, it seems like we're not going to get real prospects to compete. And so that's what scares me, because we saw, and again, I'm not an O-line basher like everybody else is. Like, they were not good, but they were not the sole reason and absolutely terrible like everybody tries to say. It was a lot of things that were terrible. But at the same time, I'm not really there for seeing us come back with the same group, especially if we're not going to make big changes to our run game and our offensive pass protection. So that's the scary part, but this is what I expected from the Bears, so we'll see. All right, Leonard Floyd, my man's Ryan Pace Now, look, I said he says the right thing so he can get out of it. So I'm not ever going to accuse him of being the most genuine guy, but he straight up lied about Leonard Floyd. I watched the press conference and I agree with what he was saying at the end of the season. But he was just like, oh man, yeah, the numbers aren't there, but Leonard Floyd does so much that you don't see on the stat sheet, whether it's in coverage or the run fits. And we really like him. We know people don't see the sacks, and we want him to be better. He wants to be better, but we really like Leonard Floyd, all this stuff. And then they released my man. And then when they asked about it, he didn't really have any answer at all. He was just like, we got to do what's best for the team. And look how fast he signed with another team. It's like, bro, what? And so obviously it's easy to say that stuff in the moment. And then when you got to make decisions, and now you could just play them both back and compare and it don't match up. He was all over Leonard Floyd and how much they really like him and they're fine with the contract and all that. And now look what happened to him. So, Ryan Pace, who usually, says the right things, and is very, political about it. He really straight up lied about that one and got caught up. So that makes the problem with that is that when he says stuff now I don't trust anything he says. So that's how that goes. They talked a little bit about Jimmy Graham, and it's what I probably would say as well. People keep talking about the numbers. That's all people want to talk about. And it was like, Matt Nagy and them, they said, look, we watch film and it's not just about the numbers. It's the way he runs routes, what type of routes he runs, his awareness, all these things. And when you think about how that would translate to what you want him to do in your offense, and we see that out of what was available, this is a guy that could do it. Now, again, I don't really compare contracts a whole lot. So when they signed him, I'm like, okay, whatever, 2 years. But then I saw the comparisons of money and I'm like, okay, yeah, we paid a lot for Jimmy Graham, but still I'm not mad at the player. Everybody's like, he's washed up and blah, blah, blah. Look, again, if you want to sit down on film and talk about him being washed up, okay, we could do that. But if you want to just say, oh, look at his numbers, then I'm not, football people, that's a dead conversation because football is way more than numbers. They talk quickly. Matt Nagy said they're going to get preseason reps, which is a big thing because last year they barely played people in the preseason. And these fans were just like, what are you talking about? It's not a problem. It's funny how quickly fans switch on narratives. Because I remember I was just like, bro, why are we not playing it? Like, oh, you dummy. We won 14 games and we don't need to play. Why play in a meaningless game so they could get hurt? And we just went back and forth about this. And then what happened in the middle of the season? We weren't playing in the preseason, and that's why we don't know how to play. I'm like, wow. So anyway, Matt Nagy acknowledged that mistake himself. And he was like, it's going to be different because last year, most of our guys didn't play. He was like, obviously, we're going to change that this year. And I'm like, okay. So he acknowledged that he won't pull that move again. And then the last thing I'll say, which is me recklessly reaching, but this is just how it comes across to me. I feel like Nagy and Pace have a riff, and it's always been hard to figure them out in their relationship. But right now, I really feel like they actually have a rift between them because one thing I noticed in this conference call is that they were stepping over each other all the time. Not like contradicting each other. They were saying the same thing, but it was almost like they had to say it themselves. And so it might be small things, but there's certain, body language and tone inflections. You just notice these things. Cause I think, and it might be the medium because in the videos, a lot of times, they'll defer and they'll sit back and let the other answer and they'll shake their head when they agree or whatever. And it's visible. Everyone can see your support or they can see you agree or they can see your reaction. But since it was a phone call, it felt like they both felt the need to say something so that everybody know how they felt. Like even with the whole Corona thing, it was like, Ryan Pace starts off with a statement, this boilerplate, political, you kind of got to say it, I guess. This is football. There's bigger things going on. Hope everybody's safe, blah, blah. Then he goes into his part. And then as soon as Nagy gets on, he reiterates the same thing. And then Nagy does it even more later. I just want to say again, we're not taking away from anybody the corona. And this is just for, it's like, okay, bro, Ryan Pace set that statement out. You don't have to keep saying it. It just felt like he was trying to one-up him. And then questions that were specifically for Nagy, Ryan Pace is jumping in later like, well, let me just add. And sometimes he was saying the exact same thing that Nagy already said. And so it was just, it felt like, to me, reading the tea leaves, it felt like two people that are fighting to stay in the building and they know they both won't stay. And it's like they're waiting to be like, it's his fault. No, it's his fault. And so that's what it feels like to me. Obviously, again, I'm reaching, but that's just kind of how I feel about it. So anyway, go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think about the phone call and some of the new information we got, the competition, the Fetty at guard, Jimmy Graham, all that good stuff. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay healthy, stay safe, stay up, and bear down.